Hello and welcome to another episode of the Radiant Achiever Show. Today I am extremely excited to introduce to you an amazing, radiant woman named Sabine Messner. She happens to be a friend, a coach, a mentor to me, and I couldn't be more excited to introduce her and have a conversation about her callings today. So before I bring her on, I want to let you know a little bit about her. Sabine Messner is a visionary futurist and 5D branding and business consultant, showing individuals how to be in business with their higher calling. Combining her new paradigm branding approach with her cutting edge strategic guidance, Sabine turns emerging leaders into extraordinary luminaries, thriving as sacred stewards and entrepreneurs alike. She also delivers innovative, holistic branding to startups and established companies with higher ambitions. Blending her 30 plus years experience and education in the fields of the arts, visual communications, and marketing with her extensive studies of cross-cultural energy modalities, Sabine's work assists in the awakening of humanity by liberating and anchoring the prosperity consciousness locked in the human potential. Quite a bio. And you'll get to see more and learn more about her right now. Please join me in welcoming Sabine Messner. Hello, Sabine. Welcome to the Radiant Achiever Show.
Thank you so much, Christine. It's my joy and privilege to be here with you and your listeners.
So grateful you are here. Sabine and I have been working together for everybody watching and listening, and I know she's going to dive into it, but she has been helping me to really connect with my soul essence as I evolve and bring more of my brand out into the world. So this show is going to be a treat for everybody watching and listening. And okay, Sabine, I have my set process here that I'd love to dive into with each one of my guests. And I think we should just get started if that sounds good to you.
Absolutely. Let's dive deep.
All right, perfect. So this being the Radiant Achiever Show, I love starting with that first question of telling the audience, what calling are you following? And why is it important to you? And even how did you even come to connect with this calling? It's a lot packed in one, but I know you'll break it down for us.
So the calling that I really take a stand for and that I embody and that I also, I feel have the great, privilege to sort of like activate within your life and your business and your calling is to lead with soul, to absolutely have the soul be in the driver's seat of this body vehicle and to lead the soul versus to think you can kind of sort of like think your way through life. It's a completely different life experience. It's actually a mega paradigm shift from living almost like facade-like lives, thinking, are we in love? Are we doing the right thing? Should I do this? Should I do that? To all of a sudden having really majestic, magical things occur as the norm, and having really an organic flow with everything, being able to embrace even obstacles and controversy or whatever we may be facing. That's really the key thing, that the key calling is to lead with soul.
I love that. And that is exactly what you do. And I can say emphatically, that's what you help others do, because that's the work that you're doing with me to really tap in at that deeper level. So my question following off of that is, Is this something you came into this world knowing this was your work? Has this evolved? How did you come to either see, feel, hear, or connect with that is your calling?
Such an important question. And, I was in preparation for this interview, really recalling this moment when I was only 17 years young. And I found myself with my mother in a hospital room. My father had just experienced the third surgery. He had a brain tumor in his right hemisphere. And this surgery went terribly wrong.
Oh.
And basically, his brain experienced a full, complete death. There is actually a medical term for a total brain failure, brain death. There was no
Wow.
electricity going on, nothing. He was dead in his brain. But he was put into an artificial coma, meaning he was breathing out, through the machines, and his body looked perfectly all right. His body looked perfectly all right, and was sitting next to him by his bedside, my mom on one side and myself on the other. And my daddy was everything to me. And I was like, it still brings me right there. And I just felt like I didn't want to let him go, and I wanted to figure out, like, how can you stay? Because he looked perfectly normal, right? And so in that moment, Christine, I actually witnessed something absolutely spectacular. I witnessed the departing of his soul through his body. And what I got to see, firstly, the soul was all around. We were all basically in a golden white kind of what felt like a cocoon, like an egg.
Wow.
An egg, bubble. Basically, the whole room was actually soul filled. And in addition to this, like, light that was holding me and my mom all around us, I witnessed his actual soul like departure. And this happened through the center of his chest. So when we recall, images from the Renaissance, for example, of Jesus, oftentimes you see the heart and the beams coming out of that. Come to find out years later, this is actually the fourth chakra. It's the heart center. And I got to see actually how a ball of golden white light was actually leaving his heart center, and then levitating a little bit above his body, then and eventually, going to the corner of the room, because I couldn't trace him anymore. I lost contact with him, after, I want to say about an hour or so. And then I looked around and I'm like, are you in heaven? Are you, where did you go? And I look up and there was a cross, and my father was not per se religious, but he was extremely spiritually connected with nature and God. You know what I'm saying? He was very, very connected. And that's how I also grew up as well. And so then he sent me a message when he was hovering by the cross, the same ball. And he said, Sabine, it's going to be totally all right. It's going to be totally all right. And I'll never leave you. And that's what catapulted me into living a completely different paradigm, because my heart was shattered in a million pieces. My childhood, my youth, in fact, actually my kind of normal life ended, and I became a half orphan at age 17. And my father meant the world to me. I didn't have any siblings. I'm very, very close to my mom, who's my biggest champion throughout all of this. But yet, this was kind of like I came to that dead stop, and I didn't even know how I was going to overcome my pain. And this is when I pledged at the funeral, when his coffin went into the ground. I pledged something so mighty powerful. I didn't realize at 17, you think you can conquer the world, right? It was like that, I don't know, hormone-filled young version of myself. And I pledged that I would live a life in which I could die any day, knowing that I had fulfilled my highest purpose. Not just any purpose, but my highest soul purpose. Actually, the reason for my incarnation. I made a pledge, come to find out, that I was going to do that. And I mean, your next question is just the perfect lead on. I'll let you.
Yes.
chime in here.
So this, okay, so how did you get then from that moment? And I'm sure it's been a whole big journey for you of then, is it you then took this journey to listen to your soul, and that's how your, life evolved, how your business pursuits evolved? Like,
Yes,
where do you go
yes,
from that big
yes,
thing?
exactly, exactly. It's so imagine for a good year, I walked around like an empty shell. So
Mm.
yes, I did see this soul departure. What that basically means is that in that moment became a soul seer. That means that, so
Ah,
here's the third dimensional reality, right? I can touch my
yep.
microphone. I've got my ring light here, I can point to things, I can grab a hold of stuff, but then it's almost like I have the ability to see through the veils of
Yeah.
illusion. It's like the multidimensional sight. The soul sight is that you all of a sudden don't see with the lenses anymore. These are actually just sunglasses. The soul sight means that you actually see through the third eye, the inner eye, and you can
Wow.
see through multiple dimensions. That makes you also able to see actually the future. And so for a while, that was such a kind of shell-shocking event, the whole thing, from that mystical, sort of experience
Yes.
of this archway of grace to my father's sudden death, which we really didn't expect. It all happened so very, very fast. The discovery of the tumor, and then the whole thing, it unraveled just within a couple months. And I lived a life of a shell, motionless,
Yeah.
motionless, no meaning, no feeling, no,
Wow.
like, are you at home? No, I was vacant. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Nobody at home. And at some point, I had to kind of sort of find a way, because I mean, that was
Pick up the
sure,
pieces, like,
yeah, a
yeah.
surefire way to live a very, very awful life, and probably end up on antidepressant medication. I mean, I looked through my lens, I looked down that timeline, and it was like, oh my gosh, Sabine, you're going to go downhill. This is going
Yeah.
to be it. Nothing will make sense to you unless you go on this unbelievable adventure. And I've always loved the word combination of adventure and business venture. So for me, being in
Mm.
business is actually being on an adventure,
Mm-hmm.
not always kind of trying to figure it out, but who's my ideal client and what's my niche and what's my business model. It's all a grand expression and a grand adventure. And so I made the big decision. By then I was between 17 and 18, that I would study art and visual communication, that I would
Ah.
be the designer of my life. Very advanced kind of thinking. So instead of like
Very
going into
advanced,
career,
17.
paths, I was like, yeah, I want to design my life based on my soul's vision. I want to become an artist, not just a painter. I want to actually, my life is my art, right? And so
Yeah.
then I decided that I needed to go to a particular university, and that was at the time in West Berlin. It wasn't that I was floundering. I picked exactly where I wanted to be and who I wanted to study with, and I just manifested that. And very bravely, when I was 18, moved by myself to West Berlin and really executed
Wow.
as the manifesting generator that I am, my vision. And since then, my soul has always given me basically direction. It's showed me the
Okay.
landscape that I'm kind of navigating into. And it's always given me very much like a GPS. We all have GPSs in our car.
Yes.
Make a left turn, rerouting, recalculating.
I
So
love
my
it.
soul is very much like that. So I'm
Wow.
actually in the passenger seat. My soul is in the driver's seat, and we're like, "Hey, this is one hell of a ride."
Wow. Okay. So I want to pause here for a second because, when you said again, this really came to you at 17. I would
Mm,
love for you to back up just a little bit, because so many of us, in Western culture are conditioned a certain way with, we start closing down all of this, forget the soul, even our intuition, and we're here in our head. And you at 17 really already had such a
yeah.
connection. Was that because of how your parents raised you and what you were exposed to, or did you really, come in as this this very evolved being already, and fortunately you didn't get polluted by, you know, societal conditioning. What I'd love to hear a little bit
Gosh, you know, this is
before
another
17.
this is another question where I have to, you know, so these are all things that we have not had a
No,
chance
we
to
haven't. We
uncover, right?
haven't.
This is all
Yeah.
new for you as well. So this is a brilliant question. So like actually the vast majority of souls come in all knowing, because the soul, what is the soul? The soul is an eternal intelligence and eternal consciousness that is infinite. So as the babies are coming into this realm, into this world, they are actually technically still connected, you know, to that higher wisdom. And then systematically, one day after another, you know, the world is kind of chipping that away. And that's why we're seeing so much separation consciousness. We're seeing, because we're severed and separated from God. We're severed and separated from source. At this stage, you know, even though, you know, we are into organic foods, we're actually severed and separated from Mother Earth, from Gaia. We're separated and severed from the animal. You know, like we live in absolute isolated. And now this lockdown is actually bringing a lot of people into this like a crisis of meaning of like, oh my gosh, how much more separation can we handle? We can't even see our parents when they are dying. Think about that. Like think about if I would have been robbed of this initiation of death, which was a rebirth, and it was also the trajectory that launched me, the launch pad for my trajectory. Think of what we're losing as individuals, but also as a society by having that all be sort of industrialized to some degree, and you know, and us not be part of it. So my parents were wise souls. I can see that through the lens of human design, but they basically didn't really interfere with me a lot. They treated me, even though I was a little girl, they always treated me as a fully intact being.
Wow.
And they let me have unbelievable freedoms. And we also traveled a ton. I saw by the time I was 17, I had seen most all of the countries in Europe. They were travel bugs, and we had a camper, and basically we just absolutely traveled together. I was also their dream child. So my childhood was a dream. And that's also why that fall, you know, was so extreme, because we were a threesome and we had an amazing time together. So in a sense, I'm no different than most of your listeners. We come in knowing, but my big advantage was that my parents did not kind of chop away at me, and they were oopsie, I had that on for us to connect, and I want to say that they were also very much soul embodied, my father and my mother.
Wow, what a gift.
Yeah,
what a gift that you received from them. Just a little segue point here. My son has a child, so I'm a grandma, and we had a conversation recently about his daughter, my grandbaby, and he's like, Mom, I don't want anybody telling me what to do. I want to live my life. I want to do the things that are important to me, that bring me joy, that make me happy. Why would I not want that same thing for my daughter? I'm not going to tell her what to do. I'm going to let her experience things, experience life. Obviously, you know, there's safety things there, but he's like, and it was so fascinating to hear him say that. And I'm like, he's bringing on, this is a new generation, right? This is a shift in that timeline, so to speak, or a shift in that perspective where she's not going to have so much of what I experienced that then I passed on to my son. Like he stopped it there. He's like, never again am I going to I'm not going to do to her what happened to me, because I was very in the box with him. There were rules and a way to show up, and you had to do this, and so it makes the difference. It
makes a big difference. And I think I would like to add to that not only did my parents kind of gave me a lot of freedom of expression and exploration, but also we grew up on the countryside. I grew up in the Black Forest of Germany. Wow. And it was actually on a farm completely self-sustained farm, when I was young, my grandmother still had the chicken. We didn't have the cows anymore, but we had dogs and cats and chicken and all wildlife and other farmers, I saw them, walk the field. So in a sense, I have, even though I'm a futurist, I've actually had almost like an old-fashioned childhood, like the kind of childhood that you almost don't actually see anymore. It's almost gotten erased, because I spoke earlier about the industrialization of this world, like from the natural kingdom to the animal kingdom, and now even our human world is becoming very orchestrated. And so my childhood was almost like paradise, because I'd opened the door in the morning and there was a forest, and I wandered into the forest and I never had any fear. Or I laid for hours and hours in the field, or I would climb the pine tree and then I would talk to the tree and I would talk to the animals. So it's kind of like, magical, like straight out of a Disney movie.
I was going to say, that's the word that was in my head. Like, could this be a new Disney movie? What would her princess name be? It would be Sabine.
The magical world of Sabine Messner, right? Exactly.
I love it. Okay. So now a core part of what you do and what you're working with me on is really incorporating your human design into your, your business brand, Soul Purpose Wealth. I know you've got a couple branches of your business.
Yes.
How, kind of fast forward us to, was that another level of calling, or was it one of those things where you just synchronistically and serendipitously have evolved to really embrace human design as a core offering for your business?
So I'm wondering, Christine, if before I jump into the human design, if I can give one more kind of
absolutely, you may, please do.
Because it's not just like, how did I get from kind of being an artist to all of a sudden human design and my business? So there was a big sort of next step, and this is actually I would say that the biggest challenge when people want to actually put their soul back into the driver's seat, that I had to overcome. Then that first one was not actually so big, because pain is an incredible motivation, right? But the second hurdle was when I was done with basically my master's in arts, I had to have another sort of like, there was another choice point. Do I go and become a professor, an artist of new media, and artist and slash, new media professor, which was all kind of already laid out there, and that would have been my career. Or do I again put the soul into my driver's seat, leave the soul in my driver's seat, because then it's like that's already, predetermined what that's going to look like. We can kind of see that in 20 years, 10 years, we know exactly what that looks like.
How the path will
unfold. I unplugged one more time and basically launched myself and arrived in the United States, where I became the first employee to help design the first online magazine in the world. So this was at the advent of the World Wide Web. Many people may be familiar with Wired magazine, and the founders of Wired magazine discovered that I had very unique thinking talents and very unique creative skills. And they said, we are pioneering right now this brand new medium. Nobody knows what a newspaper looks like online. And so we launched the first online magazine in October 1994. And I was there again in the cockpit.
Wow.
So what this soul in the driver's seat, it's not a fluffy thing. Most people think, oh yeah, I'll get to it when I have money, when I retired, exploring my soul sounds like a nice passion project, right? Like kind of at the end of the to-do list, right? No, it's a paradigm shift. So when your soul leads the way, you are going to have out of this world experiences, no exception, phenomenal out of this world, out of this world career. You can't make this up. You can't say this is like so out of reach. You will have out of this world experiences that are so fulfilling. The soul will never, ever, 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 ever misguide you, ever. But here's the hard part. Firstly, I did not want it to leave my home. I didn't want it to leave my family, my first love. There was, I had to make some very, very hard choices. When the soul voice comes into that foreground with that megaphone, right? And so it's like, okay, I have to give you now the truth pill, right? Let's be real, let's be authentic. Then we're
Yeah.
all going like, oh my gosh, are you saying that I actually have to leave my marriage? Are you saying that I have to leave my job security to actually be true to my soul? And the soul says, yes, hon,
Wow.
that's actually what needs to happen. And this is what I was facing then as a young adult in my late 20s, when I had to make that decision. Do you want to become a new media professor, or do you want to go on a great adventure?
Mm.
Right? You want to go on a great adventure because you made that pledge when you were 17. It's 10 years
Right.
later. What do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to live out my fullest, my greatest. I'm scared to death. I don't speak English. What am I going to do? You know? And
Oh
so
my goodness.
big surrender.
Wow.
So courage and confidence. See, it goes beyond believing in yourself. Believing is a mental thing. A belief system is a mental thing. We think we know who we are. We think we believe in ourselves. The soul comes into the driver's seat, and the soul says, actually, you're afraid and you're chicken shit. You know, let's it asks you to be more courageous. You have to have more
Yes.
confidence and more courage. And how can you develop that?
Unless
Not
you
by
do
having
it.
a belief
No.
system. The
No.
only way that you develop it by actually leaping and
Yeah.
launching and letting,
Stepping into.
it's almost like
Mhm.
surrender and basically say, okay, I really can't figure this
Wow.
out anymore. My mind is running into all of these walls, all of these corners. So I'm just going to surrender and you lead the way. Let soul lead the way.
Yeah. Wow.
And
Okay.
so on that
Woo!
foundation, now the human
Yes.
design kicked in. So fast
Okay.
forward, 20 plus years of pioneering
Wow.
marketing, design, startup career in Silicon Valley. I love working with startups. I love when people come to that kind of dead end. Like
Yeah.
either millionaires that go like, shit, I really don't like this anymore. I'm honest,
Yeah.
and I'm honest with people from all walks of life. And it doesn't matter to me what, their sort of like worldly constellations are. The only thing that I hone in is like, how's your soul doing? How are we doing?
Mm.
How are we doing? Are we on point? Are we happening? And that's
Yeah.
an amazing challenge of discovery and alignment.
Yeah. Alignment for
And
sure.
there's innovation, there's pioneering that happens. And so when I discovered human design, I was so grateful because I had found this amazing map that literally, when I speak to a total stranger, and they give me the map to their human design, it's like, I can actually read your soul's
Yeah.
DNA. And I can
Yeah.
actually see your original intention on a soul level, why you incarnated. Do you live it? Are you living a shadow version of that? A shadow version, like
Mm-hmm.
a carbon copy version of the roles that we play in the society? Or are you living it full out? And that's when people find their way into my world, because it's not so much about geeking out on the human design system, which is trending like crazy and I love it. But so
Yeah.
many people, again, get lost in the mental mechanics of human design, where I see it
Mm.
more as a living kind of evolutionary blueprint. It was gifted to humanity to help us in the ascension process. And that's another piece where I come in. It's all about the ascension out of the third
Dimension. Yeah.
dimensional world into a higher way of being and operating in the world. And I use
Right.
human design to activate that.
Wow. And we'll be having a follow-on conversation that really dives more into some that all that work. And I know for me it has answered so many things. And okay, so I want to go back and I appreciate hearing, and it's been fascinating because we've been working together and I've heard bits and pieces, but not really the whole thing put together, which I so love. And I, I do know for myself, as I started to listen to my soul and follow those intuitive, inspired actions, those intuitive messages and things, everything has evolved. Like the last 4 years has been just continue evolving. And so you've been really aligned with what it's telling you. And you, at that pivotal moment, were scared, but you stood true to it. So even though you were, what I would call an obstacle was like, leaving a marriage or fear of the unknown, like you had the courage already as a strong foundation, and you said, I committed to follow through, so I'm going to follow through. Uh, are there any other kind of core, maybe this is such 3D language, it almost seems lame, but were there any other core, things that you wrestled with as you continued to step into that next, living that higher version of yourself?
Yeah, I really appreciate that question. There is definitely been a red thread that even kind of followed along into my 50s, I would say, and I was able finally with the Chiron return, which is kind of a return of a great soul wound,
Mm.
to kind of resolve it and to clear it and to heal it and to love on it. But I was, for the most part, as adventurous as I was and as strong-willed as I was. In my human design, I have the defined will center, where there is a will, there is a way, right? But what I was, very much to my surprise, for the longest time, I was still an approval addict. I still,
Oh,
I wanted to do what I wanted to do when I wanted to do it, in a nutshell, except that it was my soul, it wasn't my ego that
right.
brought this all upon us.
I love it.
But then I still was very concerned about, like, are you okay with me doing this? Are you all right with me? So in a sense,
Interesting.
I was perhaps feeling like I had to compensate for
Mm.
all of these dynamics in my relationships, and that wasn't really easy to reconcile. See, when the soul, and I'm honest about it, so there is the highest level of meaning and fulfillment that you have in your own chemistry, right? When the soul comes in, all of a sudden, and you said it earlier, all of a sudden things make sense. They fall into place. We have these
You're
out of
right.
these world. We fall in love with life. We meet the higher soulmates. All of the things that the ego says he or she wants, all of a sudden are possible. However, there is that price that comes with that social kind of net, because we may be losing friends and in order to find new ones or connections. So there is a bit of that kind of like, I had to let go of my approval addiction. Most people don't even know what I was up to, really. And in the end, it took a little bit of that, like, okay, you venture out. Okay. And then oftentimes in hindsight, people say, you know what, you were really, it's not about being right, but it's like, now I understand. And
Yeah.
actually now, the goodbyes have turned into these gems and gifts, that
Yeah.
we have for life.
Right. Right. Wow. Interesting. The approval. And that is something so many women and
Yeah.
men
Yeah.
are facing, dealing with. And that was absolutely one of the things for myself, is that looking for approval from others. And that was a
I still
huge
want
one
to
to let
relate. It
go.
was a huge one, and it was a paradoxical one for me, because it's not like I actually could cater to other people's needs that well.
Yeah.
So, but I still wanted everybody to be all right. I wanted to
Yeah.
let everybody know, just a little bit like when my father left, I had to leave as well. And I didn't mean to ever,
Yeah.
disappoint or anything like that. So just to say that, I was not planning on saying that, but it is such an incredible sort of opening. And I think that when we feel that calling, I think most people hold back because they feel that it could cost them some of those kind of connections and relationships. But then in the end, when you see it all the way through, you're the
Ugh,
person that has actually brought the expansion to your children. You're the person,
right.
by not being unhappy and miserable in wherever you are stuck, that shows and teaches the next generation and
Yes.
their children's children how to live life and to not be so God afraid of everything,
Right. It's that ripple effect. And I
Exactly.
know the more that we each individually step into and own our truth, own bringing that higher version to life, which you would so beautifully do every day, it is a total ripple effect. And that's how we're going to heal, change,
Yeah.
evolve the world. And that's a beautiful thing. So I mean, I just telling your story, I see how you've shifted, but I'd love to hear, if you look back, whether it was just, starting at 17 or the time you made the decision to come to the States, like, and following your soul and being courageous, like how would you say you have changed and you have, evolved as a person?
What it has taught me very, very early on, and then I had different iterations, right, of this sort of like creation project, my life as my art piece, right, my life as
Yeah.
my canvas, right, that I kind of sort of orchestrate, right? What it has taught me again and again and again, because I had different iterations, like leaving my first marriage and moving to Arizona and finding my highest life partner and so on and so forth, that I love to begin with the end in mind. So when I can
Mm,
connect with that happy ending, which may be very, very much out of sight, very, very much in that potentiality, when I can see that and I make that connection with that, happy ending, because, it's never over until there is, the happy ending, then it's almost like a rope. I have a rope and then I pull that
ah,
kind of that happy ending, I pull that closer. So I always reverse engineer everything in my life.
oh, interesting.
So let's say I've had some bad news, whatever, I always, and this is also what the shamans do. The shamans say, like, we have to find that healed state. And
Yeah.
that healed state may not be in this dimension. That healed state is in a higher wave
Mm,
potentiality. It could be in the past, it could be in the future. The shamans travel into the eternal now. They leave this little world here, and then they
yeah.
find that healed state, and then they bring that healed state inside of this current body, and all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden the soul remembers, oh, wait a minute, I'm eternal,
Right.
I'm infinite, I can heal cancer, no problem. And this is a little bit what you actually have done. Not a little bit, this
Right.
is actually what you have done. You had to go so deep inside of yourself, and you found that radiant spark, that joyful vitality, which is your purpose. This is part of your incarnation theme, to
Mm-hmm.
not ever, 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 ever forget that we have the ability to reboot our entire being. This includes the body. We can hit the reset button
Mm-hmm.
also, and then all of a sudden, it's erased and it would never come back. It's almost like you're vibrationally not a match to it. So when we apply that to everything, and especially right now, there's so much kind of remodeling going on in our economy and our social
Yeah.
fabric and whatnot. So find that happy ending, right? What's that higher
Mm,
vision?
beautiful.
Think of it in the sense of like particle reality and wave potentiality. The universe is quantum, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I want to remind everybody, this is not woo-woo, okay? This is
Yeah.
quantum science. So in the quantum physics, we're looking at two laws that are operational in our universe. And the first law of quantum physics basically says that the observer changes the object of its observation.
I've
So we
heard
have
that.
direct influence on like what we are observing. Everything is an observer effect. And then it took the scientists another almost decade to actually not to discover the second law, but to actually accept it. Think of that. Think of that. It took them another decade to scientifically accept the second law. And the second law states that the observer not only changes the object of its creation, its observation, but creates it.
Yeah.
The observer can actually create something literally out of thin air, out of thin
Mm-hmm.
air. So, and this is what you have. You're a manifester. I'm a manifesting generator. So manifestors in the human design are actually, it's their role to pull this potential out of the ether, out of that potentiality, and make it real, right? For
Wow.
others to step into and go like, wow, did she just do this? Did she just do this? Yes, this is a quantum shift. This is a
Yeah.
quantum change.
It's so powerful, fascinating, and it's great. And I'm grateful that I got connected to you, and you have helped me understand this and really begin to embody it. in a way that I sensed it was there, but
Yes.
you've, with the human design work you've done with me, just really brought it into a very clear focus for me. And we have the dog in the background, but we'll be fine for the next few minutes here, because we're almost done. So I don't even know if this question even makes sense as I talk to you, because you're so
out of this world, right?
You are so in the soul. But I'm going to ask it, and I just, because is, if you think of, like, in what I teach with radiant achievement, we all have these inner powers, right?
Yes.
Our authentic self-worth is a power. We are that inner listening component we have to us. What is an inner power that you have used, tapped into, that's been really significant for you in your journey of bringing your callings to life?
So the radiant achievement for me, and I actually really love that question, because ultimately it is about, did you achieve your goals? But it's not the goals according to the ego mind, because it's almost like we're never enough, right? We're not rich enough, we're not thin enough, we're not this enough, we're not. It's like, because the ego mind is constantly like, oh, you're not enough, because it's like separation consciousness, right? But from a soul level, there is actually that question, Christine, about, did we achieve what we said we wanted to do? And that has to do with that incarnation, the whole purpose why we're here.
Right.
See, we have lost, as I mentioned, the connection. So what ends up happening is that we don't know who we are. We don't know where we are. We don't know what time it is.
Yeah.
We really don't know what's going on. And then you wonder why we
dark.
live lives for other people. We live lives for, did that make you happy? Because I'm pretty miserable. Like, that's what ends up happening, is we do all these things because we think we're supposed to, or it will lead us to our achievements of our goals. But the goals are different from those soul achievement. Are you actually living your purpose? And I think that is my ultimate superpower, is that I have, with the soul and soulment that I have, right? That is an absolute undeniable thing. I can then bring people very quickly, very naturally, almost sometimes instantaneously, I can bring them on purpose. And then you have that feminine embodiment and that masculine purpose. And before you know it, and this is how soul, purpose, wealth, that's actually the formula. So first we bring the soul into the body, okay? So that's that embodiment, that's that fulfillment. That's right away you have meaning. That gives you special powers, because that soul is she loves a good game,
Amazing, yeah.
And then the purpose gives you that action, that motivation, gives you direction. Okay, what are we doing next, right? So that answers a bunch of questions that people grapple with. Who am I in my essence? And then what do I do? That's the being and the doing, the feminine and the masculine, and that's the twin flame marriage. And then the wealth is actually this discovery of unbelievable amounts of wealth that does not just mean the currency of money. It also means the currency of family. It means the currency of connections. It's the currency that you have of, it's a gift exchange. There are so many riches to be had. When we are really coming into that alignment, that money can never, ever, ever buy. Never, ever, ever, ever. It's like, we are wealthy. We're wealthy beyond measures when we have our soul and our purpose. We are so mighty, mighty, mighty wealthy, seriously.
I feel that. So think if each one of us on this beautiful planet we're blessed to live on was tapped into and living in, lined up that way, the gifts that we receive from people, because we see it in glimpses of people here and there. And some people are more connected to it than others. And truly there's like the gift of being in their energy, because it's just pure joy and love and possibility, or, the gift of their talent, the gift of, like, in so many ways. You're so spot on.
Yeah. And it's very true. These are currencies. These are energy frequencies, right? That we used to exchange. When I say used to, I mean, we didn't just exchange them amongst humans. We also exchanged them in the entire sort of, ecosphere, right? The economy is a small sliver, and it runs on greed. So when we're coming into soul purpose alignment, it's like nature, wealth, people, and it's also this discovery of like, oh, I wonder what new wealth potential will open up for me, and let me observe this.
Right, right. Breaking those paradigms of how we were conditioned to,
Yes.
create wealth, which was very much the currency focus. So love that description from you. So I love this question too. Again, like the way I start is I have a very set ending, and there's people out there that are watching this, listening to this, Sabina, and they're like, yeah, that, gosh, maybe they're stirred a little bit more to say yes. Like, what would be some closing wisdom from Sabine Messner to help support people that are on the fence of really stepping into their purpose, potential, their soul?
Oh, I feel you out there, because I know that calling and that yearning, when it kind of builds, right, creates actually a pain threshold, right? And so not only are we dealing with a lot of pain, we feel internal pain, we may feel, the pain of having to say the truth, but how can we do that? How do we get into that alignment, right? So it is a very, very, very big confrontation now more than ever, that people are facing when they're really, really wanting to bring their soul back into their body, that is terrifying. So what I would like for people to know, that it's not initially going to be a walk in the park, okay, on rose petals. Initially, it basically means that you're going to have to accept that you'll be absolutely terrified, mortified. You'll be trembling in your knees, and your mind will go, you realize this is like, the mind is like, oh my god, you're jumping out of, like, the 20th floor window, right? Like, don't do it. And so get support. I'm helping right now a postal delivery person. She's been a postal delivery person since decades. And a couple years ago, she had an opening, and she is channeling amazing light language. And she is an extremely advanced soul that even puts me into awe. And I I'm definitely out there. And so she's been like, oh my gosh, could I possibly have a freedom business? I'm a government employee. Could I possibly, like,
talk about a box,
wow.
right?
So for her, when she actually, stepped into the same emerge container that you stepped into,
Yes.
She was terrified. She was trembling. She's like, you realize, that this is, like, for me, so contrarian. I should not be paying money to develop myself. I should be paying this money for a car or something, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So this is a paradigm shift where the entire sort of conditioning will fall off. The good news is, if you are accepting your calling right now, and if you say, what the heck, I have nothing to lose and everything to gain, that is very, very true. Nothing to lose, everything to gain.
Yeah.
Then you are actually, because the contrast is so extreme right now, you're going to find unbelievable support. I wish I would have had that support 20, 30 years ago, my friends. I wish I would have had that. I had to be such a die-hard pioneer, and the angels and the Jollygrams, they were in me, but they weren't around me. And now, because it's the great ascension, it's like, you just make that one decision. Sure, it's going to shake you in your boots, but there is already the infrastructure all around.
Tons of support.
People are saying, welcome, thank you.
We've been waiting for you. Your seat at the table has been reserved for some time. We knew you were going to show up eventually. So I love the way you frame that. Everything to gain, nothing to lose, everything to gain.
It's a hero's
journey. But you will be,
it is.
It is. And we hear about it. There's been books written on it, but it truly is. And more people are just feeling compelled that
and
they can't wait for something else to change.
It does feel like a death. My teacher always said, we have to die into our becoming. It is an ego death. The ego's
Yeah.
not going to be happy.
Yeah, no. But you learn how to differentiate, right? That's one of the things that's great about this journey is you, over time, we're like, yeah, okay, I know my ego's gonna speak to me, and I know how to acknowledge it, but yet not let it stop me. So that will be part of the journey. That'll be part of the process. You'll learn everything you need to know along the way. There's you've just got to start.
And we're not dissing the ego. We're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We all need the ego, but it should not be in the driver's seat, because if it is in the driver's seat, then more separation, not enough, scarcity, poverty, greed, all of that, because that's that consciousness. It's a limiter. So
it is a big limiter.
Reversing it, all of a sudden you've got a nice, realistic voice over here, and we're saying, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you. We'll take it in consideration.
Right. Exactly. I love it. So Sabine, of course, this time has flown like nothing. We could sit here for hours and talk and share more. And I know there's no coincidence that we were connected, and I know there's a lot more to come for both of us in our work together. So I would love to have you tell people what is the best way, because I'm sure their interest is piqued, like how do they find you? What's your website, or best way to connect with you to learn more and connect if they are interested in talking to you further?
So yeah, the best way is if you can remember soul, purpose, wealth, right? That formula that we were just talking about. Get your soul in the driver's seat, get your life on purpose, and the wealth will flow. Soulpurposewealth.com, and that will kind of link you to sabinemessner.com, and all goes to the same place. And then you see my human design offerings. You also see my branding and emerge offerings. And I also have an amazing gift for your listeners, and we have the link below. It's basically a Design My Dream Business two-part webinar series where I talk a lot about these dimensional shifts in our sort of perception that is actually the stuff that works the easiest these days, where we almost feel like we can't, things don't work like the way they used to. And that's because we're in a different dimension. We're moving into a higher dimension.
We are. So it's best just to put on your, put on your boots and buckle up your belt and let's go on this,
have fun.
Let's go on this ride and have fun, joy in the journey. And I think that's my maybe last little comment, because I was one of those people shaking in my boots, and like similar to you, I had those major life events that really help push me into facing these things. We don't need to have the significant events to do it, but once you kind of get your bearings, it is amazing. It's actually a blast, right? It's fun. Yes.
It's the dynamic of life in itself is so uplifting that nobody should be depressed. Nobody should be floating around like doubting themselves or not knowing how they can contribute. We have so much work to do. And so this is your entry, right? This is your entry.
Exactly. And everyone watching and listening, you're invited to if you're not on board with us, you're invited to get on board with us in one capacity or another. So Sabine, it was truly a pleasure as always to have you here. Energizing, enlightening, soul-filled, of course. And I know I took away some new nuggets. And for everybody watching and listening, I thank you for being here. And I hope you took away some great nuggets too. And I would actually love to hear what has shifted for you as a result of being part of our show today. So Sabine, until our next session.
Thank you so much, Christine.
Thank you. All right, everybody.
See you later,
Bye
everyone.
for now.